Hello, this is Psycho Miki, and today we are going to talk about something that it's on trend lately. Addictions. As many of you might know, my thesis focused on addictions, specifically addictions to toxic substance. And that's what we are going to talk in this video. If you don't know me, hi, my name is Micaela, I'm a psychologist, and I like to talk about all the social problems and combine that things about pop culture. So let's start. What is an addict? According to Ignacio de Kowitz, an addict is a kind of social type that comes into being because of certain historical conditions. In other words, society creates a recognizable figure called the addict. This figure is not only a label, but also becomes an identity, a real identity, a way to understand how someone is. Cowics explain that our subjectivity, or the way we see ourselves or others, is shaped by our practices. The names we use and the institutions that are around us shapes us. Institutions such as health, psychology, psychiatry give a name to the addict and define what addiction really is, being at service of a toxic substance. It isn't just any substance. It is about consuming things that are not planned within the legal markets. This toxic substance changes the way we consume other goods that are important for society. Yeah, and you might think, hey Mika, but what about gambling? What about other types of addiction, video game addictions? Yeah, but if you think about it, you are not consuming all the goods that are important for society, or you're not being so productive for the systems, so that it's a problem. So when this happened, you become a bad consumer. What is a bad consumer? An addict. And let's talk about a clinical perspective on addiction. Bernard Lecour, 2014, talks about the drunk man, someone who is alienated by his act of drinking. Here, it's not only alcohol, but many toxic substances that lead to a kind of automatic and thinking behavior. In addiction, the act of consuming becomes a cycle, one that saves us from having to think or decide. We just keep consuming. There is also a concept of timing addictions. When someone is deeply caught in the cycle of consumption, they stop writing their own story. And we were talking about this in our last video about Mark Fisher and the time. If you think when we consume, we don't think about another problems that we have. Consuming, it's getting the excitement of something new until we get something new again. So the addict forgot who they are and lose the connection with their past. This zero state of subjectivity means they focus only on doing or consuming without thinking or representing themselves or others. This clinic characteristic, found not only in addictions, can help someone to escape suffering in a very effective way. They provide a temporary independence from the outside world by creating a private, fleeting world. In 2000, Evan Richards pointed out that his escape is like a fast, efficient distraction from pain. But talking about addiction also means talking about pain and suffering. Poulichet in 1987 took Freud and used his ideas to explain that pain can break up our inner unity. This fragmented pain is then temporarily blocked by a toxic drug, which acts as a kind of distraction, as building a new inner unity just with the toxic. Poulichet called this process the pharmakon operation. The word pharmakon comes from Greek. It means something that can be both a remedy and a poison. In resume, a toxic substance is used as a way to remove the pain. even though it also takes the place of part of our inner selves. Good consumption versus bad consumption. All these ideas about addiction can also be applied to the way we consume in general. When we focus only on doing and forget about who we are, who is the other person, we live only in a continuous empty present without any representation, any symbolic things that make our acts meaningful. This is not only about toxic substance. It's also about the way we consume things in our daily lives. Some authors, like Poulichet, talk about drug virus that infects our society. This virus is seen as an external evil that must be removed so that we can discover our true selves and our inner goodness. In this view, the doctor or health agent is there to excise the devil. When the drug enters a person, it takes control. The subject becomes an object and it's possessed by the active drug. So in this narrative, the drug is both the villain and the active agent in the situation. A Brazilian author, Antonio Neri Filho, in 2016 noted that in Brazil between 2005 and 2015, this period was even called a lost decade. He argued that society had lost its way, both politically and clinically, in how to deal with drugs. The problem, he said, it's linked to demonization of the drug, often come from powerful groups like the evangelical church and the way therapeutic communities treat the addict. Instead of seeing the addict as a person with vice, society labels them as addicts or ex-addicts, stripping away their ability to choose. We see the difference between the good consumer and the bad consumer. One follows clear instructions, while the other is free to choose what market offers. Yet, the bad consumer offers ends in a therapeutic community, and it's even linked to criminal behavior. In Argentina today, if a person commits a crime and is addicted to a toxic substance, they are forced to get into treatment against their will, even though national mental health laws say that no one should be institutionalized without consent. Many therapeutic communities believe that completely removing the toxic substance is the only answer. They forget that there is a syndrome of lack. The body shows symptoms because something was being consumed to escape their inner conflicts. When the pain reappears, the body cries out, "I just want to end." Marcelo Tarraf in 2000 discussed different ways out of toxicomania. On one hand, there is a way of speaking and representing ourselves. On the other hand, there are institutionalist exits, where a person's capacity for enjoyment becomes fixed. Often, these institutional solutions hide behind the idea of health. Under this idea, once a person is institutionalized, they lose the ability to make decisions about their own life. Even simple things like what they want to eat or who they want to talk with. In short, they are no longer seen as full subject with rights. Now let's talk about benzodiazepines, or might I say the good drug. After talking about bad drugs, let's turn into the good ones. And let's talk in this case about benzodiazepines. The debate around benzodiazepines and addictions touch on many dimensions: medical, social, personal. In my thesis, I found that whether we demonize or glorify a substance, we often ignore the person who consumes it. Benzodiazepines are widely promoted as fast as and effective solutions to suffering. They help calm anxiety, quickly ease panic attacks, and even help with sleep. However, their uses comes at a high cost. They block the process of working through trauma and can prevent us from truly feeling or anguish. As Freud said, anxiety is kind of alarm. It tells us where we shouldn't go. But if we cover up too quickly, we might never learn where we really need to go. The relief provided by benzodiazepines it's only temporary. Over the time, their effectiveness decreases as the body builds tolerance. This means that although they help us in short term, they do nothing to resolve the deeper emptiness that drives us to consume it in the first place. Talking again about Mark Fisher in his work of 2009, work with Capitalism Realism argues that capitalism has created a culture of constant anxiety and dissatisfaction, where suffering has become something that is labeled, marketed, and sold back as a solution. In today's society, if you feel anxious or depressed, there is a quick fix available, often in the form of a diagnosis and prescription. This quick fix only reinforces the cycle of consumerism and suffering. The risk of benzodiazepines. Let's look at some numbers. In Spain, for example, from 1987 to 1995, benzodiazepines use increased by 8%. Later, between 1995 and 2002, the daily use went up by 40%, mainly because of the use as anxiety medication. The World Health Organization promotes the rational use of medication, meaning that patients should only take what they need for the appropriate amount of time. For benzodiazepines, this is usually up to 8 to 12 weeks. Beyond that, tolerance makes them less effective, and they are used unnecessary for everyday stress. There is also another risk. Benzodiazepines can double the risk of falling in people over 65 due to their muscle relaxation effects and resulting on loss of coordination. Studies have shown that even after 8 weeks taking drugs like alprazolam or Xanax, memory problems can last up to 6 months after stopping using it. Older adults are especially vulnerable because they metabolize these drugs more slowly, and they often take many other medications that can interact negatively. Benzodiazepines and trauma. Benzodiazepines also play a controversial role in trauma-related conditions, like post-traumatic stress disorder and complex PTSD. PTSD can develop after an extremely traumatic event, while complex PTSD is a result of a prolonged exposure to stress or abuse. Common symptoms include flashbacks, nightmare, and hypervigilance, even always being on guard. Benzodiazepines might reduce these symptoms temporarily, but also suppress the very process needed to truly heal the trauma. For instance, a person who suffered childhood abuse might use benzodiazepines like clonazepam to calm down. While this might reduce avoidance behavior in short term, it can also make it harder for them to develop the coping skills needed to process the trauma. Underlying pain is not resolved. It simply hides it away, which can lead to the need for even higher doses of the drug over time. As noted by experts, for example, in The Body Keeps the Score by Van der Kolk, when our nervous system becomes numb by this medication, it can properly integrate traumatic memories. This makes it difficult for therapy, such as cognitive behavior therapy, to work effectively. In essence, this relief from benzodiazepines might reinforce avoidance rather than help us face and heal from our pain. So, why face the trauma? Freud thought that anxiety is kind of a warning signal, a sign that something inside us is in conflict. While anxiety can be very painful, it also serves a purpose by alerting us to what we need to change. Instead of quickly numbing this anxiety with drugs, it might be more helpful to understand and work through it. As the philosopher Heidegger once said, anxiety is part of our freedom. Avoid it might keep us away from discovering who we truly are. In our current society, however, there is a strong temptation to cover up pain quickly. The more we try to hide our suffering, the more the pharmaceutical industry benefits. In the end, this cycling of more suffering, more consumption continues, and with it, a loss of the chance to truly heal. My thesis argues that it can be better sometimes to be an addict because that label gives you a place into this system of people, creates bond with others, and provides an identity, rather to be nobody. We see that the social and clinical treatments of addictions often strips away a person's rights and individuality. Likewise, while benzodiazepines can offer a quick fix for anxiety, panic, or insomnia, they also carry risks such as memory problems, dependence, and the suppression of the necessary healing process. And also, let's talk about benzodiazepines in works such as public relationships. In some jobs, the anxiety treatments increase because dealing with people it's really painful. So the easiest way to not interrupt their daily routine of working with people, it's better to consume drugs than losing their jobs. So we are more dependent every day because we depend to our job, depend to be mentally stable to use our mental for work. So in the end, it's important to ask, do we really want to understand our inner emptiness and work through it, even though that it's going to be a little bit painful? Or do we prefer to ignore and just keep living on in a state of constantly shallow relief? If you found this discussion valuable and want to explore more about mental health, addictions, and psychology, please share your thoughts and subscribe to my channel. Remember, it's always better to address our problems than to make silence. See you next time. Bye.